Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our very first live conversation. Tonight, I should say, my guest is Mr. Zaki Ameer of Dream Design Property, one of the best investors I've ever come across in my 13 plus years. He's actually gone from 0 to 15 properties in 3 years. Mistakenly, I was saying 0 to 10 properties in 2 years. But I mean, he's certainly exceptional, one of the best, and certainly excited to have him and be here at Dream Design HQ. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Zaki Ameer.
Hi mate.
Zaki, how you doing?
Well, thank you.
Welcome. So thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing our vision in our mission to help Australians really get into the property market. There's obviously a lot of conversation in our industry about real estate, and in particularly our marketplace, we've seen a big struggle of people getting into the market, and so we're really glad to have you.
Thank you.
So just, I guess for the half a dozen people or so that don't know who you are, give us a bit of an insight into your background and how you got here.
Yeah, look, I've been in Australia now coming close to 20 years.
Yeah.
I came here to study, and it was never my passion to become a property investor as such, but it was obviously a passion of mine to live life abundantly. And that means financially, whether it's wealth or career, family. I always wanted an abundant life and such, so I was always looking at avenues out there on what would give me that financially abundant life. I stumbled into property around 2008. I met a group of investors out there, and I looked at them, and there were a few people in that room that said they owned 10, 15 or so properties, and I looked at them and I looked at me, and I go, you're no different to myself. And I was like, here I was, working for one of the major banks in Australia, making good money, but doing the 9 to 5 and saying to myself, I'm not really getting ahead. I'm paying the tax man, I'm paying the groceries, I'm paying the bills, but day in, day out, I didn't feel like I was, financially getting ahead in life. And so when I met a few investors out there, I just looked at them and I said, why don't I give it a shot? And this was around 2008, and I borrowed $50,000 at that time, and I bought my first unit out in Fairfield in Carramar. And that was going in without really any sort of guidance. So I kind of learned, I would say, the hard way, where I've made a few mistakes. Some of them have been costly mistakes, but pure determination followed by passion to continue to get ahead financially ended up in a 3-year period of owning 15 properties.
Wow.
And a lot of lessons came out of that. And because I was working full time, as most of us were very busy and our life seems to be getting even more busier, I realized that, even though I would have been paying certain companies to be doing certain things, not one company was able to do all of it for me and kind of take the headache off me. So although I was still working full time, I used to have to spend a lot of time and hours still doing the legal work or the conveyancing, researching that, or renovations and organizing renovations, trying to figure out, the best mortgage or the best bank to get. And such, it also then led me to starting this company, Dream Design Property, in 2012.
Right. So tell us a little bit about Dream Design Property and a little bit about the story behind it, why you started it, and yeah, just give us some insight into that.
Well, I think when I started seeing the wealth that it can create, I never understood the power of real estate over a period of time, is that it made me love to see that I could actually help other people do the same. Right. And so I was featured in a few media articles back, I guess, around 2010. And I used to have fellow co-workers at the bank come to me and say, Zaki, how did you do it? What do I do about interest rates? What is equity? How do I get to my third property? And that just kind of gave me the insight, say, hey, you know what, here's something I love, which is mentoring other people why not set up a business with eventually a team of people so I can help just more than myself, others, and so on.
And you guys have gone on to help over 1,000 or so.
Yeah, look, I mean, now I think we've purchased over 1,000 properties for our clients.
Incredible.
It's been a few years. Some of those clients have bought, 10 or so properties. But it's not about how many properties you want to buy. It's just about, hey, you want to make a decision to do something different. And I always say, if someone was to ask me, why would you use us? I'd say it's just like if you were to use an accountant. I mean, you could do your tax return on your own,
sure,
or you could pay a professional company to do the tax return because that's what they specialize in. So it's the same way, you're paying a company a consulting fee to take the headache off you, to give you more time, reduce stress, and obviously eventually make money for yourself.
So from my understanding is you have, everything from conveyancing to finance, to renovations, to acquisitions, I mean, everything. So tell us a little bit about the business that is property investing.
Yeah, I mean, some ask, is property investing, building a portfolio, is it actually investing, or are you actually getting into business? My view is that if you're going to be building a portfolio of, say, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties, I believe that it's actually a business that you're running. It's a property investing business. It's a business for yourself, but it's a business. Why do I class it as a business? Let's just look at the 4 quadrants of business. You'll have an asset. The asset is your house or your apartment that you bought. It's your property. Then you most likely have a liability. What's the liability? It's most likely the mortgage that you borrow the money from the bank. And then you have income and expenses. What's the income? It's the rental income you get from your properties. And then you've got expenses. What are the expenses? That's your loan repayment, your council rates, your water rates. All of these 4 quadrants basically define that you're running a business, and it's important to understand that then you want to be surrounding yourself with business like-minded people, or use companies or service providers out there that are in the business of building property portfolios for themselves or for their clients.
Right. So, I mean, I've got, when I told people that I was going to catch up with you and that we were going to do this, they were like, oh, can you ask him, can you ask Zaki this, can you ask Zaki, everyone's filled with all these questions, and obviously we're going to keep it quite brief this evening, but one of the major questions that we've come across, or certainly the most common, is, Jason, how does Zaki do it? How does he go from, 1, 2, 3 properties we can get to, how do you go from 3 to 5, how do you go from 5 to 7, how do we go from 7 to 10? Obviously there becomes a lot of pushback from the banks in terms of serviceability, which is a big thing that they look at. What are some of the things you guys have used to kind of get past those hurdles?
Sure, I think if anyone's going to make a decision to say, just like myself I made years ago, and all our clients, also most of our clients that say I'm going to build a property portfolio, the first thing I think they need to understand why they want to do it in the first place. There needs to be like a driving reason, and I always say you've got to spend a few minutes on your own, or maybe even an hour on your own in a locked room saying, if I had all the time in the world and all the money in the world, what would I do? Would I go traveling? Would I go fishing? Would I help my parents out? Would I give to a charity? Would I start a charity? The real driving, passionate reasons. The reason this is important, and I've seen thousands of clients, I guess, don't proceed to building large portfolios, is because they're excited in the beginning, and so they get to the first property or the second property. Why is it that they don't go to buy 4, 5, 6? I mean, I'm sure you know, Jason, a lot of people would say, oh, I own a house, I own an investment property. It's very rare that you meet a person that says, I own 10 or 20.
Correct.
And you got to go the same way as myself. I'm as human as everybody else. What's the difference? I guess the main difference is understanding why you want to do it. It's what is it going to give? I mean, property is really a physical brick structure. It's like, what is that going to give? Is it the wealth and the lifestyle that you want, or the charity or the money you want to give away? And after that, that basically builds the persistence and patience to go through a property portfolio cycle. And is it easy? I don't think so. I mean, there are companies you can use like us to make it easier for you, but you're going to get knocked back. One of the things you raised is, how do you get bank loans from the third property to the fourth property? Let's just say, I have had many times in building my portfolio, building our clients' portfolios, where our teams, would have clients that got knocked back because they couldn't get a loan or they're being declined from one bank. But that's not an excuse to start.
Yes.
I mean, if you're serious about your future, hey, there are other banks out there.
Absolutely.
There are other options. And that's why you'd use us, is because to give you those options. And then it's kind of like up to you to say, hey, it's possible. Let's take it another step further.
Yeah.
So many times I've been declined by banks. Sometimes I used to revalue one of my properties to use the equity to buy the next property. And I'd have, say, bank number 2 say, well, we don't believe the property is worth this much. Then I'd go, okay, let's just try bank number 3. And then I found out bank number 3 might have a much more positive result.
Very interesting.
And the reason behind that is also, just to give you an insight, is banks obviously have to protect themselves and they need to protect their risk. And so if they're doing a certain type of lending with one bank in one suburb, maybe the bank doesn't have an appetite to lend too much in that particular area,
right.
Whereas a different lender might be okay to lend in that particular area, which means a different bank could have a different result. But would you know this? I mean, you know it now, but would you have to know all this knowledge? Possibly not. There's too much, knowledge, and this is when you use companies or in this area that go, hey, if you're not backed by this bank, or if you've got a valuation issue on this bank,
yeah.
Let's go here, let's go there.
Wow.
So you want to be surrounding yourself with people that are doing this day in and day out.
Right.
And you have hundreds of clients who've done this, and we do this on a day-to-day basis. Many of our staff have built property portfolios themselves.
Yeah. So from what I'm hearing, it's really opportunity cost, right? So opportunity cost of what's it cost me to, because I deal with it as an agent, I deal with people going out on weekends, they've got kids, it's hard for them to get around to all the auctions, it's hard to get, to go do all the inspections and see all the properties. So what Dream Design Property does basically alleviates all that time, so it saves you all that time, plus it gives you expertise, and it basically goes from, you guys cover the whole spectrum, right? So from acquisition to finance, the whole way through.
And it's important. Is it easy? Of course, it's not easy. So there's a lot of pressure on us to make sure we deliver on this promise and on this service. But imagine if you were to do it on your own. This is the challenges I had when I was building it. For myself and while I was working full-time, is that there's so many various different areas to speak to. When you look at a property, let's look at it transaction-wise, you need to speak to a bank or a bank manager to get a loan. Then you might need to speak to a buyer's agent to source you a really great deal. You might have to speak to a real estate agent as yourself to make sure that you're getting a great deal, or to negotiate. Then you have to negotiate with the agent. Then you've got to get a pest and building done on that report.
And I don't come easy to negotiate.
Exactly. As you know, your role is for the seller. But it's great to have opportunities where we can work together.
Absolutely.
And then you've got to speak to the pest and building guy. He's got to do his job. Then you've got to run a depreciation report. You've got bank valuers. Then you've got builders. Then you've got to make sure the property is rented out.
Yes.
For us to bring it all, I guess, in a one-stop shop, I feel that we're taking the pressure off a committed client who's interested in building a future financially for themselves or their family or the community. I feel we're doing a great service.
So for people out there that want to get involved, that want to get more information, that want to kind of connect with you, how do they go about doing that? Do they just go on your website? What's your process?
So our process, the website is ddpproperty.com.au or dreamdesignproperty.com.au. We've got a staff of 25, and then we've got our various partners involved also who specialize in these areas. So if you go to that website, put in an inquiry through, one of our staff will get in touch with you and have a meeting, show you how it's done, show you the strategy, build a strategy for yourself. Everyone's different. I had an interview a few months ago on TV, and they said, is it really possible to buy a property with a $30,000 deposit, because they thought it's kind of a joke. Let's look at Surry Hills.
Yeah, I know.
How much do you think you'd need in Surry Hills
at least 150,000.
Exactly. And when I'm talking to the Gen Ys out there, do you have $150,000? Possibly not. So many of the people who are buying in inner suburbs of Sydney tend to usually be tapping into their parents' equity to get in, or it's actually the parents just rebuying in the same area using that equity. But using a service like us, we help a lot of young people out there, and the everyday Australian that might just have between $50,000 to $150,000 saved up. And the way to do that is obviously using the bank's lending and buying in areas that you possibly might not want to usually buy because it's not an area you live in.
Right.
So a lot of investors or potential investors make the mistake that if they live in Bondi or Parramatta or Strathfield or Hurstville, they want to buy in that area, but maybe it's not affordable, so they think, okay, you know what, the property market's too expensive,
yes,
I'm not going to do anything. And by doing nothing, every year on,
So it's taking a step back and evaluating the situation, saying, right, I want to buy a property in Sydney, I can't afford it. Moving forward, but I need to get involved, I need to invest. How about I build a foundation for myself? Is that what you're sort of saying?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's a step in the dough. So what we're allowing the everyday Australian to do is basically step into the dough to get into the property investing market. You buy in an area that is growing. We're not going to take you in an area and kind of like that has happened in the past with other companies. You might be taken to a regional area of Australia or a mining town, which is that has a very specific time frame. We're taking you an area that we believe is currently cheap and growing and affordable for the everyday Australian to get in. The question I'd like to ask is, imagine you bought in areas like Blacktown or Penrith 10 years ago. When I was buying houses for nearly 150, 160,000, and now those properties are about 450, 500. So we're finding areas like this around Australia where we're seeing growth happen, and you can get in. But the most important thing you need is time. A lot of other investors or impatient investors make the mistake that they want to judge their results too early. So we say to all our clients that you want a minimum 10 years. Do you agree, Jason?
It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Let's face it. Property. There is no millionaire overnight. It takes time, right? It does take time, but you've got to get in that right direction. What I've found commonly is people get overwhelmed by sitting with the bank, preparing their financial documents, going and talking with a lawyer or a conveyancer, going and dealing with agents. There are a lot of people that fear that process. So, I mean, alleviating that is hugely valuable. And I must say, walking in here at like 7 p.m. tonight, we've got about 50 people here running around on the phone, doing things are really happening. And I mean, you guys truly work around the clock. It is incredible to see firsthand.
Yeah, I think it's a great feeling. Look, I'm driven by a passion to help others to help themselves, and property is a vehicle we're using to do that.
I couldn't agree more.
And I think in terms of, I guess we should answer the question, how is the Australian property market? In my view, when I travel a lot, and I'm based between Dubai and here, and I feel it couldn't get any more better, that I'm glad to be Australian and to be buying property in Australia, because I feel we have one of the most protected, stable economies in the world. And I think in the most recent example is also when Britain left the EU. As much as the pound dropped and there was panic over there, we stayed resilient.
Yes.
And that's great to the country here, to the people's mentality.
Absolutely.
And that's what makes the market stable. That we don't have too many ups and too many downs. I mean, there's always going to be speak about a bubble, but if you hold on to your real estate over time, I highly doubt if you ask anybody if they bought a property in 1980 in Sydney for around 80,000, I bet it's about $1 million right now.
Yes.
So you do make money in property. It's just a matter of you holding it.
I couldn't agree more. It's something that I preach. Commonly, a lot of people fear things like interest rates going up. They fear their uncontrollables, things that they can't control. You can't control government policy, let's face it. We can vote here or there, but we can't control what they do. We can't control interest rates. We can't control inflation. There's a lot of things we can't control. We need to look at what's in front of us. I think you would agree with me and say, okay, well, we've got historically low rates, opportunities to buy $300,000 properties in growing areas that are going to accumulate your capital growth over years. Why wait, right? What are you waiting for?
I mean, I had a question today from a potential client, and he was like, is this the right time to buy? I go, it's always the right time to buy. It just depends where you buy. You know, I mean, would you make money in Sydney? Of course, you'll make money in Sydney. Is it the right time to buy? Well, it depends. It depends who you ask.
Right.
You know, and it just depends where you buy, and that's why you use services like us to find out what are the areas you would be buying right now.
Yeah. It's funny, you know, in 01, 02, we had a massive property boom going on then as well. Had you bought at the peak of the market there, you wouldn't be too disappointed in your efforts today, right?
No, and that's the other thing. Many investors tend to go with the rest of the masses. It's
yes.
I call it the herd mentality,
yes.
and that's what drives prices up.
Yes.
When prices are going up, you want to be looking at areas where prices are down,
yes.
so that eventually, when prices go up in the area you bought when it was low, you ride the upward movement
yes.
of the property market. But in the long run, would you make money in Australia? 100%. What are the basics, I'd say? Is buy in an area that people want to live in the sense that there is demand or growing demand. And as long as that rental demand is there that people want to live in, that will eventually make property prices move upwards.
So, I mean, look, I can talk about this subject and we can chat about this until the cow. I mean, it's already dark out there, but we can talk about this till the cows come home. I'm gonna link your website, your details, all up there, so that everyone can kind of get access to it. But we also have something to announce. And because of the, I guess, constraint people feel about getting into Sydney, you know, we've really gone out of our way to expand our network and I guess strategically align ourselves in form of a partnership to help those Aussies get into the property market. So we are excited to be being an official partner of Dream Design Property, and we will be running and hosting an event in September. Zaki and I both will be there. We're going to have, you know, we're going to have a lot of people there. It's going to be a great night and very informative. If you are serious about property investing and building your wealth, I suggest you be there. I will be linking that up over the next couple of weeks, and we'll be releasing more information. Spots are going to be limited, so if you are interested early, you're more than welcome to direct message me on Facebook or get in touch with me via email. I'll link all that up as well. Zaki, what can I say? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me. It's incredible to see what you guys are doing here, and truly blessed to have people like you in our space, in our industry, really driving things forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you, mate. Thank you, and thank you everyone else. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good night. Thank you so much.